Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the FanScription podcast. I am Walter Benaziac.
And I am Rob!
I figured we would get to that sooner or later.
May as well get it out of the way.
Right. This is the FanScription podcast for our two-parter, our big two-parter. What if the Joker was in The Dark Knight Rises? Thank you guys for watching that. We are filming this a little bit later than we usually do, so we got to see some of the reaction, and we're going to be answering some of your questions that I posed to you guys on Facebook. Yes, that's still around. And we're going to get to some
of the
of
reaction? I haven't seen the reaction. I've seen the video. But.
The reaction seems to be mostly positive. Some people have some concerns, which I totally understand, and we'll get into that in some of the questions. So, but yeah, you guys seem to like it for the most part, so I really appreciate your guys' reactions and just talking about it. And then the discourse has been a lot of fun to discuss. So let's just talk about the movie first, and maybe even Nolan's trilogy in general. Rob, I know that you're more of a Burton guy, but what do you think of the trilogy in general, and more specifically Dark Knight Rises, and what did you think of it the first time you saw it?
The trilogy in general is actually more coherent than the Burton version.
Oh, sure.
So even though I'm a Burton guy, I mean, they switched out Burton for Schumacher for Part 3, and then Burton only produced, so they really feel like night and day. I mean, not as night and day as Batman and Robin and, say, Batman, But yeah, Batman Forever and Batman Returns and the 89 Batman they're way different. So I actually really liked that because I was like, wow, for the first time we got an actual Batman trilogy that was done by one guy and it's a complete vision. Altogether, it's very similar to Burton's Batman. I like 1 and 2 and 3 not as much. And 2 actually might be my favorite because I like Batman Returns and I like The Dark Knight. They're both the darkest, I think, in the series. So
for sure,
yeah, I really I like the Nolan films a lot. I'm more of a Burton guy, but there's some slight disagreements I have, which is like I don't. It's another interpretation, but my Batman doesn't have a problem with killing, but apparently other people's Batman.
Well, a lot of Batmans
does, so.
have a problem with killing, but
whatever. I mean, this is some fascist character running around in a black rubber suit. Like I figure he probably would be killing, but whatever. So yeah, but other than that, like I like both of the first movies. The Dark Knight Rises, though, I didn't hate it as much as Doug. Doug, I think, is at the loathe point in that movie now. But yeah, I just was like, yeah, that's something that happened. I really wanted to love it because, you know, we were finally getting a trilogy, and I was like, no, They Return of the Jedi to this. They Thunderdome to this. It just felt lesser.
Right.
So
I understand. I mean, like coming off of Dark Knight, I mean, there's a lot of things to take into consideration with that. You know, the biggest thing I think being Heath Ledger's death and how that would have affected the third movie, which is something I brought up a little bit in the videos. But I did want this to be more of sort of an original story within the Dark Knight Rises arc that happened. But I mean, they did have plans, kind of like very, very loose plans from what I've heard. Like David Goyer had like plans for a third movie and a second movie after Batman Begins came out and did well. So there was kind of a loose sort of idea about where they're going to go with Joker. But by the time they came around to Dark Knight Rises, they didn't want, I wouldn't want either to have Heath Ledger someone replace him or someone else, do.
And I wouldn't want David Goyer touching anything.
Right. So. Well, he still co-wrote this movie, I think, or at least had co-wrote the story with Nolan, Christopher Nolan, that is. Because I know his brother Jonathan Nolan also does a lot of work in the script.
I feel like every time I see his name attached to something and I think of the lesser parts of the movie, I get this distinct impression those are Goyer's contributions.
No, I totally
Considering
understand.
the things I've seen him do solo, I'm like, Like, I feel like the better stuff was probably Nolan. That's my personal opinion, but I have no solid evidence of that. But
right, you're probably right. But I mean, I remember at least a couple years where there was doubt that a third movie would even come out after Dark Knight. Because Nolan was like, I remember seeing all these interviews because I was waiting to see what they were going to do with it. And he's like, I mean, superficially, how many good third movies are there and like trilogies?
He's right.
And he's right. I mean, Nolan's a very meticulous storyteller. And, going back into it, he needed to have something that interested him. And he found something within Bane and sort of that no man's land-esque story that they told in Dark Knight Rises. And I don't hate it. Even watching it again recently, I don't hate it. It just feels so... I hesitate to say sloppy, but it is kind of all over the place.
My issue with The Dark Knight Rises is you had Batman Begins, so it sets up to Batman.
Right.
At the end of Batman Begins, we see the Joker card, and then Gordon's
a great
just
tease.
like,
The
yeah,
best
great tease. And Gordon's just like, it's all about escalation. You know, they're getting powerful, more stronger. It's getting crazier. It's, you know, and he's kind of waving his finger a little bit, saying, "Almost because of you." You know, like, so that's what we got. We got a city under siege. It was it was kind of like a Michael Mann film.
Yeah.
About this city under siege and this escalation and this, what should have been, in my opinion, purely nihilistic character, but instead he kind of tries to prove some points at the end. But this character that just is like, just wants to watch the world burn. Where do you go after that?
Right.
I think that's part of the problem with Dark Knight Rises, which is I'm like, okay, escalation. So what are we going to have happen? Well, okay, we're bringing Ra's al Ghul's people back. We're just doing the same plot line that we basically had in Batman Begins. It just comes back now. We have this twist where it's like, oh, she was really the daughter of and Bane's just, you know, some schmuck working. And when it was all said and done, I'm just like, this didn't feel like escalation. This felt like just a retread. Like we just regressed back to what the first movie was doing. I really wanted to see something new and unique, which is what The Dark Knight was.
Absolutely.
Compared to Batman Begins.
Completely different. I love Batman Begins, and I even like the production design in Batman Begins better than Dark Knight because it just feels like a more dark, kind of gritty city where Dark Knight is Chicago, but like
I actually
upped a
liked
little
that.
bit. I love it. No, I love that.
For the first time,
like
it felt like, oh, this is just a real city. Okay,
right.
It's not CGI. Like, but I get what you're saying. Like, it's weird. Dark Knight is as far removed from Anton Furst's production design on Tim Burton's Batman as it gets.
Oh, for sure.
It's like just here's Chicago.
Right, exactly. And then Dark Knight Rises, you're talking about doing it sort of a much different story, but they kind of just, you know, took sort of the tone of Dark Knight, I think, in terms of like how the characters interact and stuff. And then just you're right about going back to Batman Begins and kind of
I mean, I guess the idea was, well, in this one the siege worked.
Yeah,
but it just feels somehow, yeah, kind of, because it just felt kind of like, well, like I kind of have seen this in a way. Mm-hmm. It just felt that, and they shot in like
a retread.
They shot in New York and Pittsburgh, and it's not Chicago, so therefore cannot like
those damn tax breaks that they got over there. I was disappointed. I remember being so.
He needed
like,
bridges.
on.
I'm convinced that was the one reason, because he said he loved shooting in Chicago, and he's like he needed those like. The big Brooklyn Bridge and those big.
You got the small red ones that are in prominently featured in Batman Begins. Like you could see them a lot. So, man, it is kind of frustrating. I remember seeing this. Full disclosure, I love Batman Begins. I love Dark Knight. Those are my favorite Batman movies. And I love the Burton Batman movies too. But this one, I just think I connected with more. Those first two. I was reading a lot of like the classic Batman stories at that point. So, you know, reading Nightfall and No Man's Land and Dark Knight Returns and all that around that time. So seeing Batman Begins where he throws like the pictures on the ground and I'm like, oh, this is just like how it is. It's so like a little bit darker, kind of more detective-y, but then they didn't end up going that route later. But still, it felt more like the Batman that I knew than the more gothic, which is still great, and I love the Burton version, but it just felt a little more realistic, and it was sort of my coming of age kind of thing because I was in high school when those came out, those first two movies. So,
I read
the first one.
A lot of old Batman comics growing up. They used to put out like these kind of weird paperback collections, and so I grew up on the really noir version.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Burton film kind of fit the aesthetic that I always knew, but Dark Knight to me is one of the best comic book movies ever made, and I think it goes head to head with the Burton films easy. Like
sure.
it just depends on what you like, but I'm not gonna sit here and be like, well, it's obvious the Burton film is better. I'm like, it's kind of apples and oranges.
Personal taste kind of thing. It's
I'm
more
like,
exaggerated.
Dark Knight's one of my favorite comic book movies, hands down.
For sure, me too. It's my favorite Batman movie. I mean, you just can't beat. And I love Jack Nicholson, but I mean, like Heath Ledger's Joker just changed the game so much.
I like Ledger's Joker a lot more.
Right, for sure. it's hard
now,
to...
I like Keaton's Batman a lot more. I can't stand Christian Bale in
I know.
any of those
I understand.
movies.
I like,
but,
he's still my favorite on-screen
But yeah,
Batman.
when it comes to Joker, I think Ledger's got it. Really, Ledger...
I love Nicholson, though. I do love Nicholson's portrayal. I think a lot of people still like
And I think, honestly, I like Joaquin Phoenix better than Nicholson.
Right, we're going to get into the
Nicholson's getting
comparisons and all
shot
that
down with some of these new iterations. So.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of things that have come out since then that kind of define the character, too. And you can always talk about Mark Hamill as well. So, I mean, he's always thrown into the conversation.
See, that's the rough part. Like, I consider the animated versions different. I consider the animated versions the supreme version.
Me too.
So I kind of don't want to be unfair to the movies and even throw Mark Hamill into the mix because it would just be like, well, Mark Hamill, like easily, like. So that's its own separate pedestal for me. Like,
Batman though. I mean, in that's why I like some stuff in Batman Begins better than Dark Knight is because. In Batman Begins, Bruce is the proactive character. In Dark Knight, he's all reacting to things that are happening. And the voice in Batman Begins for Batman is actually pretty good. It's completely different from what comes later in Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. It's the gravelly thing didn't really come until later.
I didn't like either. No, because the one he had in Batman Begins. It's not what I do. It defines me.
It's way better than
it sounded. It had like this weird Marlon Brando thing going. I didn't like either of them.
I liked his Batman Begins.
I didn't mind like the voice is silly in Dark Knight, but the fact that he's reacting to things didn't bother me because I like the fact that movie was about Batman comes into his own and now it's just like he's getting pushback. Like, he's getting shoved around in this movie, and I really enjoyed that. The Joker's really got the upper hand for a lot of that film.
I still think it's a better movie. You're right. I mean, I think I like Batman and Bruce himself the best in Batman Begins. Well, I remember seeing Dark Knight Rises. I was in L.A. with my best friend at that point, and we went to see it, and we're huge Nolan fans. We loved the first two movies, so we went to see it, and we were just, like, got out and just, like, standing in the parking lot for, like, a half hour just in a circle with some other friends, and just being like, yeah, that wasn't really that good, I don't think. And, like, the more, like, we talked about it, there's just like,
I just remember being...
It didn't live up to what we were thinking.
Confused.
Yeah.
Like, 8 years later, and then, there were so many weird things in it. And that's kind of my one flaw about The Dark Knight, is I feel like that last 15 minutes doesn't hold up as well as the rest of the film. Almost like Nolan got behind the eight ball. He's like, crap, I got to end this somehow. So Two-Face dies after falling, 2-3 stories. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Batman survives like a 70-story fall with Rachel in hand and lands on a car. And I'm like, wait, what?
Because his cape came
It's
up.
the cape, sure.
Yeah, he glided a little bit.
Just
broke
like
the fall.
There's kind of weird things in Nolan films that don't add up when you, like, exercise one part of your brain. But I feel like Dark Knight Rises had a lot more of that.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, because I just would overlook it in Dark Knight. The rest of the movie is so good, I don't care. Like, and that to me is a good movie where it's just like, yeah, there's a plot hole, I don't care. Dark Knight Rises, I think that was the problem. It wasn't as good of a movie, so those things start adding up, and you're like, wait, what? Like, so I guess you hang Bruce from a rope, and that's instant back cure. Try that.
You gotta punch him in the back.
Try that with somebody's herniated discs.
You're
yeah,
right.
it just.
Part of your vertebra is sticking out of your back. It must be put back. Yeah. Interesting way of doing things, and it was weird. Why were they healing him? I know they're trying to keep him alive, but they were like actively trying to heal him.
No, things just don't connect in that movie for me.
Right,
it's just
I agree.
It's like a lot of randomness going on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So getting into the changes that I made for this two-parter, I remember I think telling you in the middle of writing it, I was like going through hell trying to get this freaking thing just written because I could not figure out a way to take anything out of Dark Knight Rises and put Joker into it, because the analogy I use in the episode is it's like a big Jenga tower where you take something out and it's halfway constructed, so anything you move can knock that whole thing over. So Dark Knight Rises had so many things happening in it that if you remove one piece, the whole story is different. And I do my best to try and not do that with these stories. So I had to add Joker into what was already happening. So I was like, this movie's already 2 hours and 45 minutes. I think a good thing to do would just be splitting these into two movies, which is not an unheard of idea. We've seen that with, like Harry Potter and, a lot of the book-based movies like Hunger Games and stuff. And maybe those are more akin to that because, they're based on this book and this big finale. This is an original story that still has elements of other comic books in it, but I think splitting it would make it less convoluted, where we still have two very distinct parts, sort of like Avengers, I guess, Infinity War and Endgame, but without the time jump or anything like that. It's still a continuation of the story. So we have all the build-up, and we have the Joker finally introducing himself at the end of part 1. We have all of the Bane stuff leading up till then. I added a couple things with Blake's character because I really wanted to flesh him out a little bit more. And the second part is all kind of the culmination of Joker being injected into everything. So everything still plays out just about the same way, but with Joker's influence in there. So I saw a lot of like comments in discussion about, this would be a 10-hour movie or something. Like, I don't think it would be. I mean, like, splitting it into two parts.
That's kind of hilarious, because that was my thought. When I saw it, I was like, oh, this is good, but this needs to be like a Game of Thrones miniseries at this point.
I think it would be around 2.5 hours each, maybe a little bit longer in the last part. But, a lot of things that I don't think people are realizing is I'm just re-explaining a lot of the things that were already happening in Dark Knight Rises, because if I didn't, we would be totally lost. I had to re-explain a lot of stuff. So that second part is significantly longer, is because I had to tell you what was going on in the movie, because I wouldn't have remembered either if I didn't just watch it. So I think that they would even out. I mean, the third movie would be closer to 3 hours, but they wouldn't be that long. That's just what I think. But again, it would be all in this hypothetical execution, which we're never going to see. So, I mean, that's just my opinion on the length of the movies. In terms of injecting Joker into this, I was thinking of how to put him in there, and we were talking about, even before I started writing this, about the judges scene with Scarecrow, which was a great couple scenes in the original movie.
Doug and I both had the same observation when we saw that scene. That was the one thing, because I'm not entirely convinced that Nolan was ever going to go for like, oh, we're also going to make this a big Joker movie in part 3. I'm not sure that was ever his game plan, but when I saw that courtroom scene, I'm like, oh, that had to be his plan. I'll bet you, like, he wanted Joker there as the judge so bad.
I could see that if that idea was there originally.
Yeah, like it just felt like it. Like I was like, no, that feels right with Joker. Like Scarecrow? Why the hell would Scarecrow? Who gives a shit about Scarecrow at this point?
I like Scarecrow.
I like Scarecrow in the first movie. He keeps just showing up.
Right.
Randomly.
He was kind of the guy that wouldn't go away.
Yeah, my favorite was in the beginning of Dark Knight. That's one of my little quibbles with Dark Knight, is like he just shows up and then he just gets his ass handed to him right away. I'm like, what the?
Not my diagnosis.
Okay. Not my diagnosis. But so I felt like, that's where the Joker belonged. It made me wonder if there was just going to be more courtroom stuff, and that was going to be the concept of the Joker as this mad judge,
right?
Like basically,
we have
literally the inmate running the asylum,
right? And there's a precedent for that in the the Batman animated series episode. I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember
Trial.
That.
I think maybe. But there's kind of like a little precedent for that, so you could check that out.
The conclusion is they all would have become horrible people without Batman.
Yeah.
You know what? You're probably right.
So I wanted to use that and utilize that idea, but I thought it was a good idea to make that the tease for the second movie. So we finally see Joker for the first time back, would be at the very end, and that would be sort of the tease. He turns around with a hammer and says, "Why so serious?" And that could lead a perfect sort of continuation thing into the second movie. Now, how we got him back into everything, I really wanted to make that kind of an event and make something really different and kind of creepy, because they don't talk about Arkham at all in Dark Knight Rises. Even really in Dark Knight, we don't hear much about Arkham Asylum. It's all kind of contained in Batman Begins. So sort of going back into that area from a different angle and putting a twist on that, instead of, in Dark Knight Rises, what we're talking about kind of feels like a retread with the League of Shadows stuff.
Yeah.
This is kind of a different twist on the Arkham stuff. So we have Selina Kyle go back in there and release the Joker. Now, her motivations, a lot of people were kind of confused about her motivations. So I thought it was clear in the episode, but I'll reiterate it here. In the movie, she's like terrified of Bane. She's trying to get out of Gotham. She does not want anything to do with him. And even though she's in kind of a better position than she was before the city was taken over, she does not want anything to do with him. She knows something bad is coming with that bomb and everything. So we want her to have some kind of motivation to let Joker out, and that would be kind of a fighting fire with fire kind of thing. She wants Bane taken out. She knows that she's not going to, she's not like an altruistic character, really. I mean, there's glimmers of that in that character throughout her history, but for the most part, she is a self-serving character, and she's not going to live if Bane blows up the city. So what is an option for her? Right. What's an option for her? Desperation. She's desperate. Like, well, let's release the Joker. You know something's going to happen where it could turn things worse, but it also could at least take out Bane. And Joker's probably not going to blow up the city.
It could turn things worse, but he might get rid of that damn bomb.
Right, exactly.
It's the bomb, I think, is the big thing. Well, it's like, well, you know.
Joker wants to see people sort of, I don't know what suffer, but wants to see people in that kind of state of not, like questioning their morals and everything instead of just killing everybody just to kill them. There's a reason behind it.
Anarchy.
Exactly. And that's what I think would be her motivation for letting him out. For that scene in particular, and by the way, I think Anna, our artist, did a great job on those two concept pieces of just having Selina going into Arkham, which is kind of broken down. And I don't explain everything that's happening in there. There's like blood on the floor. You hear like animal sounds and laughing, and you don't know where that's coming from. And sort of the atmosphere of that scene I thought could be really cool. Mm-hmm. And then sort of she knows this code to let Joker out of his cell. How did he survive for all those months without food?
Where did she get the code from? Did I miss that?
No, I didn't explain that. It was just kind of like she just found like a rumor she heard. Like she knows the right people. I didn't want to explain too much.
You know what? Simple hemp rope is better than a chiropractor. So we'll call it a Nolanism.
Right, there we go. But in terms of letting him out and how he survived, I wanted to keep that mystery. Like, how did he survive for a couple months just being locked in that cell with someone helping him? Joker, at least that version of the Joker, is a great manipulator. So he could have been talking to these other inmates who were let out to give him food. We don't know. Was there, like, rats that he was eating? You don't know. And that's kind of one of the great things about the Joker is the mystery of it all.
Do I look like a guy with a plan?
Exactly. So her letting him out, I thought, was the only logical way to get him back into the story. Gordon would never let him out. I don't think even Bane would let him out. There's the novelization says that he might still be in Arkham Asylum. He might be the only person left, but he also could have escaped. They don't answer that question either.
I don't think of him as the only person left in Arkham Asylum.
The only one
left. He should be out having fun as the city goes to shit.
Well, that's why I let him out.
Yeah, well,
that's why Selina let him out there. So just injecting him back into the story that way, I thought was logical enough. And we have sort of this morally gray character doing it, letting him out. So I thought that was a cool way to inject him back into the story. In terms of the second part, that's kind of building up his own faction. One of the things I brought into this, if you guys haven't read No Man's Land, that was kind of one of the things in that book, or in that story run of Batman, is that Gotham is isolated by this earthquake and annexed from the U.S., and there's all these different factions that pop up that take over different parts of the city.
I like how it's Escape from New York.
Yeah, it's kind of like that too. So Joker has his own gang that comes up, and then that's kind of just going from there about how he wants to take out Bane, because Bane, the assumption is that Bane killed Batman. Joker would not be down with that. Joker loves Batman, in
and again, there is precedent for that. There was an animated series episode where some schmuck thinks he killed Batman.
Oh yeah, the Joker, man who killed Batman.
Yeah, the Joker tries to kill him. He's like, "How dare you!"
Right. Even in Dark Knight, we have "You complete me. We're destined to do this forever." There's all that stuff is in there. So there is a precedent for that within the Nolan universe. In terms of where else I went with him going after Bane and stuff, one of the things I really wanted to do was the buildup of the Joker Venom gas. Because we didn't see that before. I thought that would be a cool kind of biological warfare weapon that he would use and unique to that gang. So him killing Bane that way, I just thought would be an interesting way of like this ultimate kind of death, and this gruesome picture that we see of him dead and he's all white with his eyes rolled back and stuff.
Which is interesting. When I saw that, I didn't know. I still don't. I'm like, do I like that or not? Because it's so Burton-y. in what is otherwise like a very Nolan movie. But I mean, that kind of like, and the funny thing is, like, you were mentioning that, they don't mention Arkham Asylum in Dark Knight or even Dark Knight Rises. That's because when I look at that series, they are tonally mostly consistent. Like, you can tell this was one clear vision from one director. But
for sure.
Batman Begins is definitely a comic book world. Whereas he tried to get as far away from that in Dark Knight, right, and he returns just a little bit through some of the influences, but it's still, I wouldn't say, a very comic book world in Dark Knight Rises. Mm-hmm. So I was like, it's like, would I want like a Smilex gas thing? Like,
it wouldn't be, but my version of it wouldn't be like, the new Joker products, haha. This is like a biological warfare weapon
and
that he's
hair
using.
color so natural, only your Undertaker knows for sure.
Exactly. But this would be more of a dirty kind of homemade thing. This wouldn't be like this Smilex, like dancing commercials. This is a more.
I know, it's the way it leaves
gritty-
the smile and everything. I'm like, man, would I want that? Because people think that's a callback to like the Burton films, but
You're right. Joker. That's a thing throughout his history. His first appearance was that kind of thing. So like that's been throughout his whole history. It's not just a Burton thing. So him using that in this movie, I think, would have been really cool. Just an interesting way to kill off.
I did
Bane.
love the image of him riding the bomb like something out of Doctor Strangelove. Yeah! Like just flying out there with Batman, like, we're destined to do this forever. Senpai, notice me!
That was kind of my motivation behind that. Would just be like he would want to go out with Batman the most chaotic way possible. Try to, he's shaking the cable on the way out to try and screw with him. So
when you want my favorite Joker moment in anything ever, I still think it's got to be Mask of the Phantasm when that theme park is blowing up and he takes one good look at it and then just laughs his ass off as the fire is
with
just
his
approaching.
blood just coming down his face.
Yeah, like I'm like
too.
that is one of the coolest Joker scenes in anything ever.
And the Phantasm with the smoke and then they disappear. Oh, so I love that moment as well. Fantastic. Just the production design on that park, the Gotham of the Future.
Yeah,
and Mask of Phantasm, so cool.
Very like New York World's Fair.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, so I mean that it reminds me of that where it's like, that's just like the ultimate nihilist moment, just laughing as the world's just burning around you.
Right. In terms of the Bane stuff, the only major change I made, which I thought made things a little bit simpler, was making Talia and Bane half siblings. You could totally make an argument against that, and I could totally see your point. Like, no matter who was commenting about it, I was just trying to condense that a little bit. Where I really never liked the twist with she made it out of the pit. Talia is the one who made it out, and she's been in charge the whole time.
I wouldn't have had a twist.
You wouldn't have had any twist at all.
No. I think that's part of the problem is like Bane is such a cool character that it just makes him look like some lackey then working for somebody else, and I'm like, why?
Right.
It's like if you want to give it to a female, then I'm like, well, then you should have just written it as a female character who was running it the whole time. Don't throw out some twist at the last second like, it was secretly her. And I'm like, or give Catwoman a more powerful role. But no, that's one of those scenarios where I'm just like, no, I would just prefer it if it was just Bane. I'm like, why do we need someone else running the show? Is Bane not he seems pretty competent overall.
Absolutely. I mean, like, one of the things I tried to do was, instead of him directly working for Talia, like, they're partners in this. And I gave him a motivation where he is this illegitimate son of Ra's who was never accepted by him and served this prison sentence for him, which is one of the things that happens in his original origin story in the comic books, is that he serves his father's prison sentence and grows up in this prison. So he has like this motivation, so he takes over the League of Shadows and goes back to Gotham to do what Ra's al Ghul could never do, to show that he was better.
That alone to me is fine. You don't need another twist on top of that.
Sure. No, I totally understand that. But I mean
that's
like,
my opinion. But
no, I totally get it. But I mean, Miranda Tate's kind of a useless character without that twist, in my opinion. So it's like,
I don't think the movie needed her. If I'm being honest, that was one of the many things in Dark Knight Rises.
If you take her out, though, then like that causes a whole bunch of other, a tidal wave of issues that you would have to change.
No. I mean, you're bringing up probably one of my biggest gripes about Dark Knight Rises, which you said it's like, well, it's like a Jenga thing. You remove one piece. I'm like, yeah, I think the whole thing was overly complicated.
Yeah.
If you look at The Dark Knight, it's a simple as fuck story. There is nothing really that complicated going on. It is this nihilistic character moving in, taking over from the old guard, and going against Batman. It's not complex. There's no secret people working for this. There's no, it's my half sister or whatever. It just, that's all it is. And I think that's why a lot of people still respond to that movie the most, because it's just executed mostly flawlessly. And it's a simple story. And then you look at Dark Knight Rises, I think maybe he got stuck in the trap of like, well, I said the second was about escalation. What's this one going to be? Well, we'll make it more complicated. And that's just how it came off to me. I'm like, this is more complicated, but it doesn't stick with you like Dark Knight does.
No, absolutely. In terms of Miranda, I mean, I think the fact that we have the League of Shadows back and we wouldn't have had Talia in there, I mean, would also be kind of strange to have just Bane leading the League of Shadows.
But see, that's the thing. I wouldn't have brought the League of Shadows back.
No, I know. I'm just talking about
within
the framework of the movie that we already had. I mean,
Although
Talia's a great character
it's
too.
tough for what you had to do. I don't envy what you had to do.
Yeah, it was. I mean, just going through it, the first part was just hell because it was like I really had to just reiterate a lot of different things and just remind people of the small changes I'm making that are going to pay off in the second part. So it was a lot of work.
And you're rewriting it. I mean, you're doing what we've mostly generally been doing, but like what I did in Black Widow, we're rewriting it within the framework of what's already there.
Right. Which is usually what
personally, if it were me and you were just like, how would you fix Dark Knight Rises? I'd be like, dump the whole thing, start over from scratch.
No, ideally,
but I mean, so you had a much tougher job because I would just like screw it, like I just write my own movie.
Ideally,
with
that's
hookers
what I
and
would
blackjack.
Do. Oh my goodness. Ideally, that's what I would do too. I mean, especially with the 8-year gap, I think was kind of a big issue for me when I first saw it.
My knees can't take it. But if I put like this brace,
the robo knee, and I could kick through bricks and stuff. Like very interesting.
Thanks, Chris.
The only like other kind of major changes I made was with Blake leading the Sons of Batman faction. Again, leading back to that, or calling back to the No Man's Land stuff.
That was the stuff I liked the most. This concept that as Batman's aging, because I thought that played in much better into the idea of escalation, which is like, well, how do you escalate things? And that's where I think you were like seriously onto something there. It's like, well, now you've got all these vigilantes on all sides. You've got the good guy vigilantes.
Right.
You've still got the cops, and you have these bad guy, like, I don't want to say vigilantes, but these
The
bandits.
mercenaries,
All these mercenaries with their own thing, following their, inspiration, their leaders, their heroes, whether it's Batman, Joker, Bane. And I'm like, I like that idea. Like, that's how to write an escalation plot, where it's like, how do you make this worse?
Right.
Like,
and that's where we ended. And I tried to hammer that point home, is that what was most important was the legacy of these characters. So there's still the presence of Batman, whether, I left that ending ambiguous, whether he's alive or not, which the movie like tried to do and then didn't do.
I'm Schrodinger's man.
Right. Yeah, so like just the idea of Batman or Joker living on past their own life, and their ideas still out there in the world and still out there in Gotham, I think seemed like what they were trying to do and just didn't go all the way with. And I just tried to hammer that point home in my version of it. So, and also calling John Blake Dick Grayson instead of Robin, because that's the stupidest freaking thing I've ever seen on film.
I do remember eye rolling a little. Like,
I was like,
I thought it was
wow.
cool that they're like setting him up to be Robin, but
Yeah,
he's like Robin. I was just like, ugh.
Yeah, like, but it was so like, it even felt like a last minute thing.
That's the name he
It's like probably
took. I don't know.
Probably under my legal name. Like, oh, I like that name, and then it's not on the person who's talking, and she goes like, you should use it more often, Robin. It's like, oh, come on, man. Just, you could have called him Grayson or Richard or anything, and it would have been fine.
How about Rob?
You were a Rob.
What's wrong with Rob?
Why didn't they just call him Rob?
There's a lot of things wrong with me, but
that was just a small thing. I was like, come on, man. So like the Dick Grayson thing, he's already an orphan, so it's like, yeah, his birth name is just Dick Grayson or Richard Grayson. Like, the easy way to get out of that situation. Ricky. Yeah, so that was one of the things I was really trying to adjust about that character, which I did think he had a really great scene. Maybe my favorite scene in the whole movie is him talking to Bruce, and one of the things I changed was like him just not seeing the look in his eyes, and he figures out it's Batman. He actually does some detective work beforehand to figure it out.
I like that so much better. Like, he's obsessed, and then he figures it out instead of just like, I don't even, what, it was something effective.
I saw the look in your eyes, and then I knew.
I saw the look in your eyes. It's the look of an orphan, and therefore you're Batman.
It didn't even make any sense. Blake is what, like 30-something years old?
I was waiting for Bruce to say, what?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, the timeline also makes no sense, because Bruce was only Batman for like 8-9 months, because Dark Knight takes place 6 months after Batman begins.
That's right.
So he was only Batman for like
when you
less
put
than
it
a
that way,
year.
those movies seem a lot weirder.
Right.
Like,
He was only Batman for like less than a year, and then there's an 8-year time gap. So like the Blake character would have had to have been like, what, 18 or something, or like he would have been like
retired,
not that young at all. So I don't know what he was doing in a boys' home or whatever at that point, because he's like obviously in his early 30s in that movie. So
yeah,
the timeline doesn't quite match up. It's kind of got the Rocky syndrome going with that. But Yeah, Blake was one thing I really wanted to fix. But like I said, that scene with him talking to Bruce outside of the weird I saw a look in your eyes thing, that was a great scene.
My problem with Dark Knight Rises is there's a lot of scenes I love individually.
Sure.
But it's also a cluttered mess around it, so it's like panning for gold. You got all these great little nuggets in there. It's gonna sift through all the shit
right.
and
You're right.
But that was a great scene. There's a few Bane scenes I really like.
Yeah.
Catwoman's mostly.
She's ineffective. I mean,
Yeah.
I at least gave her one more big moment in this.
I so prefer Michelle Pfeiffer.
Bazillion percent. Yeah. I'm not a big Anne Hathaway guy anyway. I mean,
I'm indifferent.
I know she's a good actress.
I'm indifferent to Anne Hathaway. I'm not sure she's Catwoman. I feel like if she's Catwoman, she belongs in the 1960s series.
Yeah.
I feel like a Julie Newmar kind of like,
Sure.
But yeah, no, there's a lot of scenes, and then the opening scene on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few great lines to, there's no money here. Why are you protecting it?
Right.
But it's like, then you have to sift through all this other stuff to like get to it. So, but yeah, that was one of the great scenes. Most of Gordon Levitt's scenes I think are amazing, and I'm like, it's kind of sad. I would have liked to have seen him pick up the mantle because he is still the best Cobra Commander. he will give it his all, sometimes to the point where it's like just crazy. Like, the hell are you doing? Like, G.I. Joe. But I mean, I'll say this: I still remember him in G.I. Joe because it's like one of the most amazing just, I can't
he's a good actor, man.
He goes nuts when he needs to, and I would have loved to have seen him go nuts as Robin because I feel like he would have had some Batman moments where it's like, ooh, can we see him beat the living crap out of somebody?
Yeah, for sure.
But not kill them like Michael Keaton.
No, don't
can't
kill
do that.
You can't.
No, can't do that. We can't.
You're right.
Batman never kills.
Batman's not supposed to kill. You're right.
Not even by accident.
It's in the Bible.
No.
That's what it says.
That was first issue ever. He totally killed the guy. But whatever.
He did, but then they changed it.
A mentally ill man too. Like, Jesus Christ, Batman.
Yeah, I mean they changed it later. We'll call that the Bob Kane influence. But anyway. Like the other changes I made were pretty minute. I mean, I just kind of had to keep the train rolling and keep everyone on track about what was happening. But the big thing, obviously, was the Joker getting involved. We went through all that stuff. Now I just wanted to do a little quick kind of comparison, sort of mini review. We've both seen the new Joker movie, the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. How do you compare that performance to Heath Ledger's?
More dance intensive.
That's for sure. Just half the movie. Apples and oranges, though they both hit on the so I liked Joker a lot. For me, though, it was like a B+ movie, which of course means that everybody's like, how dare you? DC fanboys come out because I didn't like it enough, but I'm like, out of an A through F, I'm like, yeah, B+. Like, there was a couple little things that were like dragging it down a little for me, but they both have the same issue where I'm like, I really was hoping for a truly nihilistic character. And they both kind of like get really preachy at certain moments where I'm just like I kind of like Mark Hamill the best, maybe because his Joker is just in it for the lulz. Now his is in the animated series, so it's a little more family friendly, but it was like, I really just want to see a Joker who, as Michael Caine said, just wants to watch the world burn. And like, he kind of does it, but then there's the whole thing like in Dark Knight where he's just like, oh, I'm going to prove a point to Batman that these people will blow each other, and then when it doesn't, I'm going to blow it up anyway. And then at the end of Joker, there's this scene at the studio or whatever he's at on this talk show, and I won't spoil anything, but it just gets a little kind of preachy all of a sudden where I'm like, is that his point? Like, is he making a point now? And I'm just like, man, I really just want one where it's just like, I just want to kill people. That's really what it's all about. Like, so they both have that problem, but other than that, like, they're very just different. Which is a good thing.
Yeah, I feel absolutely, despite him trying to prove a point, that probably Ledger's is a little more nihilistic. My favorite scene in Dark Knight is when he's just got the Chinese guy on the pile of money, and he just sets the money on fire,
right.
And I'm like, that is the Joker.
Sure.
Like, that is just pure, just like, what the hell? Bing!
Right.
Like, I'm not sure there was a moment quite like that in this one, because I feel like they were trying to get us to maybe sympathize. I mean, not to the point, like, I didn't come out of the Joker thinking that this guy's a hero. I came out of it thinking this guy's out of his goddamn mind.
I don't
like,
think. I mean, you should.
well, that's the criticism.
With him. I know.
That's what some people say makes it problematic.
I don't think
it's problematic.
If there's any movie that's going to inspire violence or some kind of blowback on the scale that we see in the movie, in this movie in particular, it's not Joker. I don't think that's the one that's.
I honestly think Dark Knight would have been the one to do it a little more than Joker would.
Yeah.
But they do. I think they do want you to kind of see where he's coming from, what birth is, which is something we didn't get in Dark Knight.
Right.
Yeah. So it just they both feel different, and I honestly don't know which I like better because the performances are so different.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought Joaquin Phoenix hit it out of the park. I mean, the only thing I didn't quite enjoy, just because I was having a hard time seeing this character do that, was the interpretive dancing, where he's like, not that when he's kind of skipping along as the Joker, that's when he's doing the weird, like,
looking in the mirror,
like I'm like, this feels like something a way more pretentious character would do. Like, I don't know, but apart from that, I loved his character. I don't know if I can pick a best one, though, because they're both so different, which I enjoy.
For sure.
Then now we've got
different in a good way.
3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so many radically different interpretations. All of them good, except for Jared Leto.
It's true.
I love that meme where it says all these Joker interpretations are fantastic, and then right in the middle it says Jared Leto just says not you.
Yeah.
you, not you.
There's a meme I saw with all like these little kids with the other Joker's heads on them, like pointing and laughing, and they're laughing at the Jared Leto Joker, and he's like crying in the corner.
And that's the one that someday grows up to become the Joaquin Phoenix Joker.
Oh.
He was so picked up.
He was laughing at himself, and then that's interesting.
But yeah, I thought Joker was a really good movie. It's got some issues here or there. It gets a little muddled. And
sure. We won't go into any spoilers on this.
Yeah, we won't go into spoilers.
Seen it.
But it spoon feeds you a little at points where I thought, oh, it was so cool not knowing the answers to these questions.
Right. Yeah.
And there's some talk about, like, well, he's an unreliable narrator, so you don't really know. And I'm like, I don't know. I've seen that argument, and I feel like that feels like a way to kind of justify the fact that you got spoon-fed a little near the end. But I'm like, if the director claims that was his intention from the start, I'm like, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but I would raise an eyebrow, because it doesn't seem to me like some of the things people are arguing. I can't give it away because it would be a spoiler.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to discuss in the Joker movie for sure.
But the first half of that movie I thought was flawless.
Okay.
Absolutely flawless.
I got you. I mean, I got to see it one more time to really get a full opinion on it. I reviewed it on my personal channel.
You don't love it? How can you not think it's the greatest thing ever made?
I did.
You Marvel shill.
I was hoping to love it. I didn't love it, but I did really like it, or at least in parts I really liked it. There's things about the portrayal that definitely take a unique angle on Joker that we haven't seen too much before. Maybe a little bit in Killing Joke. But we really dive into his origins and why he is the way he is, which is what this movie was promising. So it delivered on that aspect of things. It also went a little farther than I thought it should have, and you agreed with me with some of the more comic booky elements, right?
Yeah, there's like, again, it's like Dark Knight Rises. There's twists where there doesn't need to be twists.
Right, for sure.
And then they try to tie it together to the larger universe a bit in a way that I was like, honestly, I would have enjoyed this if they really left that out of it. Like,
we didn't need it at all.
I was really enjoying just Joker without any other references.
Right.
I loved the movie for that.
I will say, after seeing like initial reactions when I saw Dark Knight, it was like, "What, Heath Ledger? Whoa! Like, this is like game-changing, incredible." When I first saw the Joaquin Phoenix Joker, it was like that was really, really good, really good. And I didn't think game-changing, like Oscar-worthy performance. That's not up to me, obviously, but probably going to be nominated at least.
I think he should get nominated. I'd have to see who else is nominated, but I think absolutely it deserves a nomination.
Right. I mean, he was kind of.
I think it's the only reason it might not be a full game changer is because Ledger got there first. I mean, if Ledger hadn't...
But they're not the same, though. I don't think he drew, like, Joaquin drew anything from Ledger's performance. It doesn't really even feel like
No,
the
but I
same
mean, the
character.
idea of, this darker, more nihilistic Joker that's not all about the ha-ha laughs. I mean, I guess
But
Ledger's
he's
is
not.
a little more, but...
That's the thing is, like, it kind of gives away spoilers. I don't want to give away too many things. But he's not really nihilistic until later. Like, you know, you're kind of rooting for him to do
which one?
better. Joaquin Phoenix, I'm talking about.
Oh, you were?
I mean, at the beginning, it was like you kind of want him to.
I don't know. I took one look at it. I was like, this guy's crazy.
No, I'm not saying rooting for him in the bad things that he does. Rooting for him in terms of you want him to see him do like better, like to heal. You want him to be a good person.
Well, what the movie's trying to do, it's doing Falling Down.
Yeah, I've seen that comparison.
Which I like that movie because, yeah, at first you're kind of like, ooh, this angry guy is going to take on the system or whatever. And then at about the halfway point, it's the empty briefcase. That's the point where it's like, I think it hits most audience members like, oh shit, this guy's just crazy. Like, because at first, like, you were kind of like on board, like, yeah, and then he keeps going one step beyond where you're just like, okay, this isn't funny anymore. Maybe he's just some nasty racist kind of, and then when you find out the briefcase is empty, it's like, oh my God, like, this guy's just out of his, and I feel like they do that with this movie, and I kind of enjoyed it for that, where it's like, I think they want to sucker you in a little into being like, yeah, and then somewhere at the halfway point, you just like, whoa.
Yeah, no,
whoa.
Absolutely.
Like,
no, you know, he like the arc is appropriate for what's happening, and you don't. By the end of it, you're not like, yeah, yeah, Joker. The beginning before like his big turn happens, it's like you just feel sorry for this guy.
Yeah, my only complaint. Some keep they're like, oh, it's like a Joker origin story, or one of them, you know. It doesn't strike me as much of an origin story because it has the same problem. Stephen King said this about the Stanley Kubrick film The Shining, which I do love, but it is a legit point, which is just like, Jack Torrance in the film version is just crazy from the start. And the point this movie wants to pick up Joker, he's already nuts. Like, at least in my opinion, I was like, oh, okay.
Well, there
like,
is
so we saw
it's a spoiler if I mention.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I feel like we kind of don't see what he was like before the starting point. So it's not an origin. It's more like, oh, kind of crazy guy gets shit on more, becomes even crazier. It's not a like, oh, at what point was he ever normal? Was he like we never see?
I don't think he was ever normal. I mean,
and maybe that's the point of the film.
Right.
But it's tough for me to be like an origin because there's not a ton of point A to point B in this. Like for an evolution, I'm just like, yeah, it just seems like he gets worse. But he was already at a starting point where I'm like,
I think the movie opens on him like crying, smiling, or something.
Yeah. So I mean, that kind of tells you everything you need to know, and it's not. It doesn't make the film bad. I love the movie, but it is something interesting where it's like,
you love the movie. You said really? I mean, there's a difference.
I mean,
did you love it or did you just really like it?
I really like it. Like,
okay.
I maybe in a few. That's the other problem. And Siskel and Ebert started this, and we're all playing the game, which is so it's hypocritical to even bring it up. But this idea that, well, when you see a movie, you have to report on it instantly. And those thoughts can never change. Right. I could, a few weeks or months from now, be like, I really love this movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Or it could not hold up, and I'd be like, oh, man, I didn't like this as much as I originally did. I'll say this. Days later, this movie is sticking with me more than probably any other movie I've seen all year, which is a good sign that I'm like, okay, maybe I'll see it again and love it even more. But I mean,
that's what
that's what movies should do. Like, you should be able to go back and reinterpret them and look at them and like they can evolve. But like with this stupid tribal fan culture right now where it's like, how dare you not love it? Like, or it's just like, oh, you like that? That movie's probably, how dare you? It's like, there's no room basically to even discuss or talk about a film. Everybody just wants to stake a claim. Yeah, and opinions change. Right. There's tons of movies I saw bad. Or look, the Marvel films are a great example. We had, when Thor 2 came out, I'm like, yeah, I like it. Like, it's fine. Like, we've had since then, like, so many other Marvel movies come out that now when I'm looking at them all together, I'm like, yeah, no, not so much. Like, we can now reevaluate some of these going back and looking at the competition and everything else that's come out. And
absolutely. Or they might just not be cinema, like Martin Scorsese says. None of them at all.
Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, who am I to tell what Martin Scorsese thinks is cinema? But kind of a strange thing for him to say, I think. We got to move on to the question portion here because we're running a little bit long this month. So this will be for both Rob and I. I took some questions on Facebook, so we're going to answer some of these right now. This is from Zach. He asks, if you had to choose a superhero / comic book character to make a movie out of that has not been made yet, who would you choose? And he says he would personally choose Zatanna. Strong character. I like Zatanna. What do you think? You got any ideas?
I was going to say Spider-Gwen, but I know they're doing that, I think.
Yeah, she's already in the Spider-Verse movie, and I think she's getting her own movie. I mean,
I wouldn't say that movie was about her.
No, but she is in it. I mean, like, she's got
somebody who's not been covered.
I think, personally, I have one. I would love to see a Question movie. I think that would be a lot of fun. Detective story, like No Face. I think Vic Sage, is the original character's name. Not Renee Montoya, the original Question. I know there's rights issues with DC and another publishing company or something about that character, but I think that'd be really cool to see either as a miniseries or a movie.
Squirrel Girl.
Squirrel Girl. I think we're going to get that eventually.
Eventually.
Probably.
You know what? I got to go even. Dazzler. Let's finally get the Dazzler movie we deserve. Actually, you know what I would like to see? I mean, she's been in movies, but I'd like to see something that focuses on Kitty Pryde. She was one I really liked, and you know, but I'd have to think of one that didn't, because there's the X-Men have so many characters that were in the movies. Man, who is out there that? So many of them have been done.
Right, Marvel for
the
sure.
ones I grew up with.
Right. We'll come back to it if you can think of something.
I know are they still in Sandman? I don't know if that's
they're
that's not
working
really a
on it.
superhero, though.
They're working on that. Well, he said comic book character, too. So, yeah, they're working on Sandman, I know, right now. Yeah, I got to get into reading those more.
I love those.
Yeah, I got to get into it. This question from Rob, not you.
I decided to ask myself a question. Wanted to pad this thing out.
He has a couple questions. What villain, other than Bane, would have been ideal for The Dark Knight Rises? What could have fit into the Batman Nolan universe?
Riddler. Easy.
Riddler. Yeah, that was the rumor for a long time.
I thought it was going to be Riddler.
That was the rumor. I agree.
I thought it was going to be what's-his-face, who tried to out Bruce in Dark Knight. That was the rumor, and I'm like, that'd be amazing. Maybe Nolan's like, it's too obvious. I need something even twistier.
Yeah, Riddler would have been cool.
Yeah, Riddler. Clock King might have been an interesting one.
Ooh, that's a good call. That's a good pull. Clock King, hell yeah. That's awesome.
Penguin.
I don't know.
Penguin wouldn't work.
I like Penguin, but I don't think it would have worked in that.
Not in that universe.
Right. Riddler, I think, is kind of the go-to answer, but Clock King, I like that.
Mad Hatter, I wouldn't do because he's too close to Scarecrow.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think Mad Hatter is a super underrated villain that should get his own or a Batman movie when he's the main villain. But I don't think he would have worked in the Nolan universe.
Yeah.
But I do love Mad Hatter, 100%. Yeah, I think Riddler for both of us and Clock King, those are our answers there. I'm going to ask you this. Who could have / would have been a better casting choice for Catwoman other than Anne Hathaway? Who do you got? We're talking 2012, so this was a while ago now.
Nobody. Because I'll tell you why. If you can come up with somebody great, I'm just going to say this, nobody. Because my problem is not, it's Anne Hathaway. My problem is that the character was written to be Anne Hathaway. So there's nobody you're going to cast because it's always going to be a weak character.
Right.
The issue is not that it's Anne Hathaway. It's that it was written to be an Anne Hathaway character. It's like, well, she's got to be pretty, and she's kind of ineffectual, and so you'd have to rewrite the character to do it. I don't think there's anybody who was like, well, they're going to sell this role so much better than Anne Hathaway, because I'm like, well, it's obvious Nolan just wanted Anne Hathaway.
Yeah. I mean, they worked together on Interstellar, I think.
Yeah.
So there was I guess that was after Dark Knight Rises, but they like working together. So they've been in several movies, working on the same team.
If it was,
I don't know, man. Who was it 7 years ago? Who was kind of?
If this was a little further back, Sandra Bullock might be somebody that I'm like, because she's a little soft around the edges, but I've seen her do roles where I'm like, she can get pretty.
Yeah, maybe I could see that.
But that's the thing. I'm trying to think of who would be an Anne Hathaway replacement? There's nobody that would be because I'm I could say 1992 Michelle Pfeiffer, but that's not the character.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a kind of a stumper. I don't know. Sandra Bullock's not that bad of a choice, but Yeah, it is a very Anne Hathaway-esque role, and I'm not sure what else they could have changed to get that character in here.
Mila Jovovich.
With the Jovovich.
Maybe,
it's not that bad. Okay.
Mila Kunis.
You know what? Mila Kunis has very like feline-like features. I feel like so
I could
she
say
could
on it. You know what? I'm gonna say it. All right, I'm gonna say Mila Kunis because I would just be.
We'll go with Mila Kunis.
And I'll tell you why. I would just be way more interested in what her take on that would be than what Anne Hathaway's is. Just because Anne Hathaway was cast because she's Anne Hathaway. So, like maybe Mila Kunis could have been like, oh, I'm in a big film now. I gotta like do something. With this.
Black Swan, Mila Kunis, I could see it.
Yeah, I could totally.
That's a good call. I like that. I'm gonna go with his answer. Mila Kunis. I could have seen that. This question is from Miles. Got a couple quick questions. What was it like creating this particular FanScription? I think I went over some of that. It was the hardest one that I've done so far, especially splitting it into 2 parts.
That's funny because the next one I'm doing is the hardest one I've done.
See, we're really grinding it out here. These
past 2, man.
Yeah, they've been pretty tough. Are all of these episodes a collaborative effort in terms of writing them, or just a person who is hosting the particular episode?
No, I can't stand him.
We hate each other. No, we've been writing these individually. And then I edit the episodes, so I mean I do have a hand in like the visualizations.
Sometimes ideas,
right?
Because you were like texting me about how you were having trouble,
right? Yeah, even
and then I was telling you the next one I was gonna do is short, and I'm like, crap, I had a sudden like inspiration.
Yeah, it's a little different. But yeah, I mean we do bounce ideas off of each other, but we haven't written one together yet. I think we'd like to do that eventually. I think we're talking about maybe like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, we gotta get J-Raz in it.
Yeah, for sure. Jim would be a great asset to that team. And even like a lot of people have been requesting a Burton Batman 3. So I think we're like very early. We were talking about collaborating on that.
I want to take on rewriting Batman Returns a bit to fix some problems in that too.
Sure. So like eventually we'll probably co-write an episode, but we haven't done it yet. There was a kind of a Scarecrow question. Address the detail. Okay, so how... Also, this was a problem in the movie as well. Wasn't Scarecrow poisoned by his own fear gas by Rachel in Batman Begins? He was, but I mean, by Dark Knight, he's fine. I mean, like as fine as Scarecrow
well,
could be.
Well, I got better.
So, because what?
Well, I got better.
Oh, got better. Yeah, he did. It's a minor point, but if the script was real, how would you address the detail of it all? Yeah, I mean, I think that they kind of already addressed that detail.
I don't think the gas would kill him, per se.
No.
Maybe it's like iocane powder. He built up kind of an immunity.
An immunity. I mean, like, and we all saw that in Batman Begins, they have those shots that they give each other. And I kind of tried to play up that in the part 2 with the big Scarecrow scene. I really wanted to showcase him, like, in the most Scarecrow way possible, so... Like showing Bruce's journey back was another big thing I forgot to talk about. But, that all leading to that big Scarecrow scene, I thought, would still give him something to do. I like Cillian Murphy, man. He's a good actor.
Oh, I love Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
Peaky Blinders. If any of you haven't seen that show, he's freaking amazing in it.
Yeah. I've heard a lot about that show. I got to check it out.
Oh, it's so great.
I've heard
Sam Neill, too, with the world's worst Irish accent, but it's kind of also amazing.
So was there any villains from Batman's Rogue Gallery you would have liked to have seen? So we already talked more about Riddler, I think, and maybe like a Clock King type character. He thinks that, this is from Martin, Bob Hoskins as the Penguin.
Wasn't Hoskins dead already by that point?
I don't think so. Not by the time Rises came out.
Okay.
He only passed, well, I could be wrong, but I thought he passed away like 2013, 2014.
Okay.
And this is the Matt Damon as Mr. Freeze. He says shot in the dark here, but maybe Matt Damon is Mr. Freeze? I know that Nolan was always like, no, Mr. Freeze, because I think he just saw, Batman and Robin.
It's a no for me, dog.
Yeah, I don't think that would have been the best idea there. But yeah, that's a good question. We have one more, or a couple more here. Dallin asks, why did you decide to chronicle Bruce's journey back to Gotham? While I liked it, it felt unnecessary compared to everything else you added. I think that was one of the big complaints in the original movie, is that he kind of just pops back up in Gotham from escaping the pit. At least that's from what I heard from people.
I never had that problem. I'm just like, Jesus, I assumed he found a way to get back.
Sure.
They're not keeping good time in that movie anyway, so I didn't look at it as like, oh, and he spontaneously showed up 2 hours later. Like, I figured it took him days.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to chronicle that kind of, The Dark Knight Rises. The part 2 of that, the whole first act would be him coming back. I think that would be give something for Bruce to do that wasn't just popping back up and getting into the middle of everything that's already happening. Sort of showing the stuff that's happening with Joker and building all that up in Gotham while Bruce is on his way back. Kind of this parallel story with those two in the first act is something that I wanted to tell. And I think you could also, like I said in the episode, drop a couple names in there that comic fans would know, like Batwing or Katana or someone that is, historically an ally to Bruce. Would be kind of a fun thing to show him, struggle his way back. So the pit was just the beginning was one of the quotes I used in there. Escaping the pit was just the beginning. So him and his journey coming back, I thought would have built Bruce up a little bit more. Just give him more time to kind of get himself together before going against Bane. I also made sure I put the back injury in there again. Like, we have him hitting the back, so it's like, it's not just, it's fine. Like, at least there's a couple shots. It's my bad back. How could you do this to me? So I think we have just last one here. Why did you choose to leave Batman's fate up in the air? I love the idea. I'm just curious about the creative process behind that. I feel like in the actual Dark Knight Rises, they halfway did that, where it was like we weren't sure if what Alfred saw was like sort of just this wishful thinking thing, or he just was seeing things in his head, or like.
Oh, really? I thought that he was just there.
No, because a lot of people were having that discussion. I remember after the movie came out, and then like Nolan or someone came out and said, "No, he's alive. He's fine." So it's like, okay, so they did some kind of editing cheat, or he fixed the autopilot, and like. There's, hidden meaning in the words he said before that. I think a lot of things were like, no autopilot, he says, right before he takes off.
I ejected and used my bat chute.
Used my bat chute.
And then the blast blew me away.
Right.
And I floated 3,000 miles to Venice, where I'm now drinking cappuccino with chamomile. I'm telling you, it makes sense.
I must have friends. It's totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think the movie went halfway with that. In terms of like sort of the legacy of Batman, and kind of if he lived or died, they did eventually answer that question. But I thought it was, at least in my interpretation, it was kind of up in the air.
And I died. I lied.
I'm the lying Batman. So yeah, I really wanted to go all the way with that idea, and like I mentioned earlier, just kind of the idea of what lives on is the idea that these characters and what they inspire. And other people, and the ideas live on instead of just the
beating the
people
crap
themselves.
Out of people outside the law.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just so long as you don't kill.
No, you're right. No, it's all about hope. That's the thing, which is hilarious. That this was more about hope than than like the Man of Steel. The S. It's not an S. It means hope. Like, really, let's 9/11 this town real quick, and then very hopeful.
Have you watched The Boys yet?
Yes, loved it.
Okay. I was like, how did you get through that? That's so.
Well, they're not pretending
hopeful.
To be.
Oh, okay,
like
fair enough.
Superman. They're obviously horrible people and horrible characters.
Gotcha. They are.
Yeah, and it's a more extreme Watchmen.
It's what I would like to say is a much more realistic take on what superheroes.
Yeah, you're right.
Be.
They would be power.
Which maybe is why I like Burton's Batman. I'm just like, yeah, that's what he would really be. But whatever.
Yeah, I get it. I still think the moral center of Batman is that he doesn't kill, and that's the big conflict within him is that he could easily do that and doesn't, and is trying to show people a better way. And they try at least.
It's more about
that.
saving innocence. If you gotta break a few eggs to make an omelet along the way save innocence.
I mean, he didn't kill Ra's al Ghul, but he didn't have to save him. I mean, still, that's pretty much killing him. So he did it anyway.
That's what I like to call a loophole, Ra's. Later.
Peace out.
Woo. Have you ever noticed? So I saw this when I was watching your FanScription because you had some clips.
Yeah.
Of him as Batman in there. What is with this thing? Every Batman has their weird idiosyncrasy. Because of the way the suit was built, of course, Michael Keaton's he had to do the bat turn, which is like a full whoosh, so he couldn't turn his head. Is there something in the suit design that makes Christian Bale just want to leave his mouth hanging open like a dead fish?
It wasn't like that in Batman Begins.
There were so many scenes in Dark Knight Rises that,
you're right. It is freaking weird.
It's
He does that in Dark Knight, too. Yeah.
They want to prove to you.
He's like turning Two-Face's face like, no, the Joker cannot win.
It is weird. I don't know what it is.
Looks like a dead carp. Looks like a carp like waiting for you to throw some popcorn at it.
Yeah, it's strange because I mean it's not like a Christian Bale signature. He doesn't do that in any of his other roles.
The weird
so
thing
I don't
is
know what
it reminds me of like Val Kilmer, but even he did it less.
Yeah.
Because Val Kilmer had the big he's got the Kilmer pouty lips.
Right.
So, but I don't know. Is this something I hadn't really thought about it nor noticed it much till I was watching the fan series? Because out of context, seeing some of those scenes, I'm like, yeah, what is with that? He looks like he just ran a marathon.
Yeah,
and
he's always
just
like,
walked in the room just.
It is like that. No, you're right. You're right. But again,
or he looks like me after I've jogged a block.
Again, it was not like that in Batman Begins. I mean, like, I don't know what the deal was, but I mean, maybe it is kind of just pushing in there or something.
Sorry, I just wanted to point that out because it was bothering me when I was watching
I understand. But in terms of the question that was asked there, yeah, I just wanted to go all the way with the ideals of the characters, good or bad, Joker or Batman, living on after them. And maybe they're alive, maybe they're not. You know, you could kind of put those, details together yourself. Because this was always meant to be the last movie in the trilogy anyway. So, or in the quadrilogy, as I could say, because it's 4 movies.
The tetralogy?
What? I don't know.
I think if it's 4, it's like it gets weird. I know it's
Quadrilogy,
Latin,
quintilogy.
No, quint would be 5.
That's what I'm saying. 5 is quint. So if you keep
I think
going,
it's a tetralogy if it's 4.
I never heard that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thought it'd be quadrilogy. Whatever. Who cares? It's not real. So thank you guys for watching this and reacting to it. We've gotten a lot of discussion off of this one, both like positive and negative. So it just shows how much people really like Batman and Nolan's version of it. A lot of people like Dark Knight Rises too. So more power to you if you like it. I think it was just clearly lower than the other two. And I don't hate it, but it's just, in comparison, it doesn't hold up all that well.
I'm just, nah.
You sure?
Like this middle of the road.
I'm kind of like that too.
Doug, I think, hates it. I
don't hate it, but
that's the thing that happened. I like that we got 3 films from the same director,
right.
But it's the Thunderdome for me. I mean, I like the Mad Max films, but Thunderdome's always the weakest one for me. It's like kind of the same thing with Dark Knight Rises.
Right. So let's tease a little bit about our next episode, which since we had 2 episodes for Dark Knight Rises,
doing Schindler's List.
Oh my!
I'm gonna rewrite it the way now.
Yikes! Yeah.
God, no.
Since we had 2 for Dark Knight Rises, that did bleed into October, but we are still having an October exclusive episode, which is a little bit Halloween themed. Rob is taking this one over. What do you think, Rob? What is it going to be?
How do you fix Disney's The Haunted Mansion?
Woo!
Number 1, get rid of Eddie Murphy. We're doing that. I tried for 2 weeks to do this with Eddie Murphy, and I'm like, this just isn't working. The second I got rid of Eddie Murphy and changed the casting on it, I'm like, oh, this works way easier now. Mm-hmm. I actually like Eddie Murphy a lot, but I'm like, that was not the movie for him.
Sure.
Like, this is not a right vehicle for him, so.
That's understandable.
Yeah, gonna do little things out of the box. We're not gonna base it on the classic Disney ride, the one set in New Orleans, nor the Disney World ride either. We're going with another ride they did that was Haunted Mansion based. So.
There's a lot of lore around those rides, so it's cool that you're going into the.
And I love the original Haunted Mansion, but I'm like, we've seen it everywhere, and like everyone's like, let's do one of the lesser known ones that people might not know about, and that way you can make it more like Pirates of the Caribbean, where they also thought outside of the box. It was like, we're gonna make it exactly like the ride, beginning to end, and I'm like, no, don't do that.
Came out the same year too.
I know, that's what kills me. Is like they got one right and one so off, and I'm just like, if you go a little like Pirates, it's like, yeah, throw some references in as a little seasoning, but it's like, don't just make it about that.
Right.
And also, make it legit scary in scenes.
Oh, it should be. It should be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm writing it more. It's somewhere in between Pirates and like a PG movie, where I'm just like, it might be a soft PG-13 or a hard PG, but it's like, it's a family film and it's not high art, but it's
family
picture. But it's like, definitely, I'm like, no, I want some scares. Like,
right.
I want this to be like scary, like some classic Disney can be. So.
Right. Did you ever see, really quickly before we wrap up, did you ever see Michael Jackson's Ghosts, that short film that he made in like the early 2000s?
No.
That is kind of what I would kind of hope a Haunted Mansion movie would have been like, because it is legitimately creepy, but it's still kind of a for kids sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It's got a lot of like really fun ideas, and it is in this Haunted Mansion and stuff, and all the stuff that happens there is really kind of creepy. But that, if you haven't seen that, I mean, that's kind of the tone that I would have picked for a Haunted Mansion type movie. And I know you're definitely trying to make it at least a little bit scary, so that's gonna be cool to see what you got cooking for us.
It should be a movie that like it's scary, but it's okay. It has a happy ending.
Right.
So it's like I'd pull a Don Bluth and be like, you can put the kids through any sort of ringer
Yeah.
so long as you have a happy ending.
Absolutely. And if there's any movie that should have like those big scary movies for a Disney movie, it should be The Haunted Mansion. So.
Yeah, of all the ones, like it should be scary and then a little goofy here or there. Like you gotta
have some
play both
legit
sides,
creepy scenes. And
But
you
yeah,
can be
it
legit
should
creepy
be,
without
it should
being
be
gory.
scary. And the Haunted Mansion, the ride, is legit like so. There's goofy ghosts in it. You got the Hatbox Ghost and the Hitchhiker Ghost.
Yeah,
but
I mean the beginning,
but
people are hanging above you. And
yeah,
stuff,
there's
like,
people hanging above you. There's the floor dropping. The ballroom scene is really creepy and atmospheric.
Great.
So yeah, I want to return to that kind of Haunted Mansion.
For sure. Cool. I'm looking forward to it, man. You guys should look forward to that too. That'll be out in a couple weeks. It'll be before Halloween, so make sure you check that out. We'll be back next time. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Walter Benasiak.
And I'm Rob.
And we'll see you
I was raised in the FanScription.
We'll see you next time when we not just torture your body, but your soul. Actual line from the movie. We'll see you guys later.
Batman, how did you get here? We didn't see how you left from the pit and made it to Gotham City without a long montage.
Bye, everybody.